Good morning. We are here in the Promedica Museum of Natural History. We're hanging out in the Venomous Snake Room today. So everybody, come on in, join us, and let us know that you're here, that you can hear us, you can see us, and we will take just a moment to build our audience and give everybody a moment to join us. While we're waiting, we'll do some shout outs, so let us know who's tuning in today. We appreciate you guys coming each and every weekday to our Facebook Lives. We are really enjoying doing these for you, and we hope that you're enjoying moving all around the zoo and learning all about different animals. Hi Ruth and Napoleon. Hi Alan. Thanks for joining us. Today we are going to be talking snakes. All about all different kinds of snakes. Gavin and Grayson, hey in Kansas City. You guys have been waiting for the snakes? Well, it's finally your day. Hi Lily and Hazel, thanks for letting us know you can hear us. Hi Ellie, we miss seeing everybody too. Hi Braxton and Karasan. Hi McKinley and Logan. Hi Liam. Hi Kenzie and Samuel. Hi Nevaeh, Brooklyn, Jade, Tesla, Corbin, and Kaysen in Florida. Hi Lucy in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Hi Emma. Hi Max and Avery. Stephanie, this is your day, girl. We have Nick with us here, and he loves snakes too. Hi Molly in Monclova. Hi from the Smith crew, or hi to the Smith crew. You guys said hi to us. Hi Zoe, Ava, and Morgan. Scott, we think this is pretty cool. Hi Alba. Thanks for tuning in. Hi Carissa. Hi Anna, tuning in Weston. Hi Theo, William, and Marcus. Logan and Emma, thanks for coming today. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and get started. We are in the Promedica Museum of Natural History. We're standing now in the Venomous Snakes room, and we're going to be talking all about venomous snakes today. As you can see, we are practicing proper social distancing and doing everything we can. Our volunteers here at the zoo created these awesome masks for us. I got this one. Corey got a really cool cat one that he's excited to be wearing back there. And we appreciate that you guys made these for us to help keep us all safe. We hope that you're safe and healthy out there, and thanks for tuning in and staying connected with us. Of course, if you're able to, we appreciate all donations during this difficult time. You can donate through our Facebook Live feed on ToledoZoo.org/donate or on our Facebook fundraiser. And there are a lot of other ways to get involved too. You can set us as your charity beneficiary on Amazon Smile for all those online orders you're placing. That helps us too. You can become a zoo pal for your favorite animal. Help provide care and extra enrichment and things for them during this time. And of course, we have our Meals on the Go happening Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you haven't had them, they're delicious. Check them out. It's for the whole family. Order online at ToledoZoo.org, pick it up curbside, and dinner's done. Awesome stuff. And our education programs are still going on. We've got lots of virtual classrooms. They're coming up with new ideas all the time. So if you haven't checked out their page, go to ToledoZoo.org/virtual and see all of their offerings. All right, but we're getting into the snakes today. So we're here with Nick, and he's going to talk to us about some of his favorites that are in this room.
Yeah, so today we are in our Venomous Snake Room, one of the areas that I primarily work in. Ever since I was a young kid, I always had a passion for different animals, big cats, venomous snakes, but I really came to love working with venomous snakes a lot. I felt they were always one of the species that was a little bit misunderstood. So I'm hoping today we can get into talking a little bit about why you should be fascinated by venomous snakes. Even though we need to give them the respect as they are potentially dangerous, we can still be really in awe by them. So one of my first personal favorites, up there with Komodo dragons for favorite reptile, has to be the king cobra. So we've got one of our female king cobras right here. She is actually an Indonesian type of king cobra. So there's actually a couple different types of king cobras that all range throughout Southeast Asia. So the other side of the world, so hopefully you can't find any of these around here. But these guys are really cool because there's actually a couple different looks to them. So if you've ever been over into our reptile house, you may have noticed our big male, and he's actually more of a dark brown to black color. Now that's actually more of the Malaysian or Thai type of king cobras. So these Indonesian species, or Indonesian localities, actually get a lighter color and kind of get that pale look to them. So we have the female up here right now, and then our male is actually downstairs, separated, so our female can have some time. We were hoping that they may actually give us some babies this year, but after seeing how the females progressed, it doesn't look like it was our year to produce baby king cobras, but hopefully next year. King cobras are also really cool because they get their name, the king cobras, because they're predominantly a snake-eating species. So in the wild, they would actually eat other snakes and even other cobras, which is really unique because most other venomous snakes don't eat snakes and don't eat other venomous snakes. And that's kind of where they get their name, the king cobra. They're also the world's largest venomous snake species. So maxing out at somewhere upwards of anywhere from 15 or so feet, which is a really large specimen. They can get extremely big. So a really cool species. Our female here right now is probably about 8 feet. So she's actually, I want to say 4 or 5 years old. And so she's still got some growing to do. King cobras are also a little unique in the fact that males will get significantly larger than females. So this female probably will never reach those monster sizes, but our males might actually get that big. Now, one of the other cool venomous species we have over here is our mang vipers. Now, these are probably up there, and most would say are one of the most beautiful venomous snake species. They have this extremely really cool pattern that mimics the moss that they actually are found near and around. Now, these guys are native to only one area, which is also called being endemic. So that means they can only be found in that one area natively. And this is a mountain in China called Mang Mountain, hence the name. We actually have 2 animals in here. So you can see the animal that you're looking at right now is got that really nice green color and blends perfectly in with the moss around it. Now the other male over here, you might notice, is actually almost like a white color. Now what this is this species is what we call, or this animal is what we call opaque. And that means it's actually about to shed its skin. So what the snakes do is they actually will shed their skin all at one time. So it's kind of like a new beginnings. And as we go along, you'll probably notice in a couple of our cages, we've actually left the sheds in there so you can actually see them. Another neat exhibit is one of our multi-species exhibits. This is our Arizona rattlesnake exhibit. So we actually have 4 different species in here right now. We have our Arizona black rattlesnakes, our blacktail rattlesnakes, our western diamondback rattlesnakes, and soon to be our tiger rattlesnakes. So they're actually not on right now. So right now there's only 3, but there soon will be 4 species. Now these are all found in some parts of the Arizona desert. They may not be all in the exact same mountain range, but it's a unique perspective to see how different species can live symbiotically together in their same habitat. So a pretty cool aspect of this exhibit.
And talk to us, we can see these here, they're actually coiled up together.
Yeah, so rattlesnakes actually are thought to be this really aggressive species, but a lot of the times you can actually find a lot of rattlesnakes together. And what will happen is in the winter, much like kind of a bear, they'll actually hibernate. So during the winter in the desert, it does get cold, believe it or not, or cold to a rattlesnake, as they are ectothermic, which means they get all of their heat to warm their body from their environment. So if it's not warm enough out, what they do is they actually go down underground and kind of slow down their body. So they shut down their metabolism a little bit, and they'll actually go into these underground dens. And a lot of the times you'll actually find multiple different species all curled up together and basically just doing the same thing, hunkering down, staying cold, and trying not to burn a lot of calories, as the food might not be out and available, nor can they digest it properly without the appropriate heat.
All right, we're getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to start firing them at you here, Nick.
Perfect.
Morgan and Bennett want to know, how often do snakes shed their skin?
So each different species can be different based on if they're more of a desert species or maybe more tropical species. Usually we find that the tropical species actually shed a little bit more often compared to the desert species. And then also it has to do with the different size of animal. Babies will often shed a lot more frequently than adults, where adults may shed once, maybe twice a year. Babies might shed every couple of months. And that's just because as they shed and grow, they need to get rid of their old skin so their new skin can come into their new body, and they can utilize that as they're growing. The other cool thing about rattlesnakes specifically is there's an old common myth that you can tell how old a rattlesnake is based on the number of rattles it has. Well, that is somewhat true, but it's also somewhat false. Now, rattlesnakes do acquire a button every time they shed. So you'll notice with some of our rattlesnake species, you can see very long rattles and some very short rattles. However, this isn't usually a good indication of age like you would count the rings on a tree, because they don't necessarily shed every single year just once. Usually they shed more often. The other thing too is the rattle is actually just dead skin, so if there's a disturbance, oftentimes they can break off chunks of their rattle, which will allow them to have a much shorter rattle even though they might be much older.
All right, and Alba wants to go back to when you were talking about the king cobra, and you said that they eat other snakes. Why do they eat other snakes?
So that's a really good question. So we don't know exactly why they eat other snakes, but somewhere in their long-term history, they've evolved to be basically the most successful at eating snakes. So mammals are very quick. Snakes are also quick, but they move in a very different pattern. So over the years, king cobras have evolved to be extremely successful in eating these other snakes and hunting them down. The other aspect is their venom. Their venom has also evolved to be specifically toxic enough and immobilize some other venomous snake species, in which they can actually break down that animal's either body or blood system to actually make the venom go into work and actually allow them to eat them. The other thing that we kind of theorize, and this is just more or less a personal theory, but it seems like king cobra's digestive tracts are extremely evolved, where when they do defecate, they don't often have many remains even of bones, fur, really much of anything. So we think that they may actually have a more evolved digestive system to actually eat a species that's not super fatty like a mammal or maybe a bird would be, as snakes are mostly muscle and just skeletal as well as skin.
Cool.
So it's pretty unique in the way that king cobras actually can eat. Now, in captivity, though, we don't feed our snakes other snakes. We actually have worked really hard to get these guys over to eating just mostly rodents that have come in already pre-dead. So we try not to feed anything live. Everything we try to feed is dead, just to make sure that the animals are safe and it's as humane as possible.
And Stephanie wants to know, is there a way for visitors to easily tell whether they're looking at a male or a female snake?
So usually it takes quite a trained eye, but sometimes you can actually see at the base of the tail, males often will have a more elongated tail, where females' tails, where it goes from kind of the body into what we consider the tail, which is sometimes hard to see where that might be, but it'll taper off much quicker. So you'll have it kind of coming streamlined and then taper off very quickly, where a male will come off and slowly taper off over a much longer period. So now one of the species that embodies this, and I can show you, we might be able to see it, is some of our ground-dwelling vipers, or adders in this case. So this is one of my personal favorite animals, just because he's having a bit of an identity crisis, or my apologies, she is having a bit of an identity crisis. This is a puff adder. And puff adders are natively a terrestrial species, which means they usually live on the ground. However, this one, most often, we actually find it up in the tree. So it actually is communally living with our western green mamba, which is actually maybe having an identity crisis of its own, as it's down on the ground. Sometimes they get a little confused, but what you can notice is two very different species. And they actually are different based on not only how they look morphologically, but also their fang structure, which we'll get a little into later. Now, if you kind of look at the tail of this puff adder, you can kind of see how it's pretty thick, and then all of a sudden it tapers off very quickly. Now, that's one of the key characteristics to kind of telling if a species may be male or female. But again, it takes a long time of getting that expertise down to really be able to definitively tell easily.
All right, Trenton and Dad want to know, how much do snakes eat each day?
So that's a great question. So we usually eat 3 meals a day. Well, snakes, like I mentioned before, are ectothermic. So they actually don't need a high body temperature of 98.6 like we do, and they actually get all of their heat from their surrounding. Now, this allows them to be much better at processing calories. Now, most snakes, usually in the wild, would go anywhere from a week to a couple of weeks, with some species, like big pythons, sometimes going up to 6 months with eating one really large meal. So snakes are actually really good at conserving calories, some better than others. Like our mamba, you can notice, is much more slender. Now, that's not a skinny snake. That snake is about in perfect weight. You can see it has good body condition. So he actually eats more frequently, and we feed him usually about once a week, an appropriate sized food item, where like our puff adder up in the tree here will eat basically about once every 3 weeks or once a month. The puff adders don't do a whole lot, so moving around, they burn a little bit of calories, but most of the time they are sit-and-wait predators or ambush predators, where mambas will go around and actively hunt. You can see the mamba's moving much more and burning a lot more calories, so it needs to eat much more than the puff adder would, where it likes to kind of sit and stay at home, just like we are right now.
And Elijah wants to know, how long can snakes live?
So that's a great question. So it depends on different species, but usually we try to say the average is about between 15 to 20 years for some of the larger species. Some of the smaller species living a little shorter, but also some species living well up into the 30 mark.
And Elias asks, where do the snakes keep their venom?
That is a great question. So if you actually look at the rattlesnake that Corey's looking at right now, you can actually see it's kind of got a triangular shaped head. Now, most snakes, or all snakes, actually have a venom gland in the back of their head. And we can actually use our cool graphics over here, which if you haven't got a chance to try these out, come on in and check them out. So these actually just lift up, and you can actually see kind of a visual representation of some of the skull structure. Now, the venom gland is often kind of in the back cheek pocket, somewhere behind the eye, in both elapids, vipers, and colubrids. So this actually would be the venom gland right here, and there's a duct that runs directly up to the fang, which is where the venom would come out. So now we actually have a little bit of a special treat for you guys to kind of show you the difference between elapid fangs and viper fangs, two of the different types of snake species. So if you've got a chance to go over into our Nature in Hand exhibit, we actually have some different snake fangs in our display cases there to show. Now you might be wondering, how do we get snakes from, or fangs from the snakes? No, we didn't take them out. They actually shed their fangs usually just about every meal, if not every other meal. So much like sharks, they are constantly replacing teeth, unlike us where we usually get about 2 sets of teeth. Now you can see the difference between the two types of fangs. You have, on this side, you have your viper fangs, which are often a long hinged fang that will usually in the snake's mouth, it'll stay tucked up along the roof of their mouth, and then when they go to deliver, it swings forward and then punctures in. So now we'll see if we can see, but if you look at the end of the fang, you can actually see a small little hole right at the end here. Now that's actually where the venom comes out. And then on the other side, you can kind of see that little tubule. So it's almost like a straw, very pointy straw. And don't worry, I'm in no danger as we've cleaned these fangs and made sure there was no venom left on them. But it's a really cool aspect to see the difference between the two. Now this is actually from our coastal taipan. You can see it's much less curved and a lot shorter. Now this is actually part of one of our front short fixed fang species. So you have three different groups of venomous snakes. You have your vipers, which is going to be your vipers and rattlesnakes, and then your elapids, which is going to be things like cobras, mambas, coral snakes is the only one in the US, and a bunch of other different obscure species. And then you also have your rear fang colubrids, which we might be able to do a highlight episode on those in our biovenom area in front of our komodos. So
that was awesome, Nick. The questions just keep coming, we're going to keep firing them here. Emily's 2.5-year-old wants to know, are there any pink snakes in the world?
Pink snakes. There is some snakes that have a pinkish hue, and we actually have one downstairs. It's not currently on exhibit. It's a male eyelash viper, and we're hoping to put it on exhibit in the near future, but right now it's actually hopefully going to be the male to help breed us some new babies for that species. So keep coming back and you might be able to see that one on exhibit.
Cool. And Noah wants to know if there are any rattlesnakes that live in Ohio.
So there actually is rattlesnakes that live in Ohio. We don't have any that are in Toledo. We used to have the eastern Massasauga, which we actually have 2 of those over here. So the eastern Massasauga is a small rattlesnake species that you actually can find in Ohio, as well as you can also find timber rattlesnakes in Ohio.
All right, and 3-year-old Piper wants to know, how many snakes are there in the entire world?
Oh, that's a good question, Piper. I would have to reference Google on that one. There are a lot of different species as well as a lot of different individuals. However, much like a lot of the other species, snakes are also potentially affected by things like habitat disturbance. So just as we love to protect tigers and elephants and all the cute cuddly animals, we also really need to make sure we're protecting the snakes as well and give them the appropriate home that they deserve as well.
And Logan in Kansas City wants to know how big the green mamba can get.
So that's a good question. The green mamba is still fairly young. That species particularly can probably get about 5 feet, and a really large one may be able to get up to 6 feet. Currently it's probably about 2.5 feet, maybe 3, but it will get much larger, and its thickness will probably be a little bit larger than a quarter. If you go into the reptile house, you can actually still see one of our adult eastern green mambas. So a little bit of a different species. It's going to range on the eastern side of Africa comparative to this one ranging on the western side, but that's a pretty good size of an animal for an adult mamba.
And John wants to know, how do you safely clean these exhibits?
That's a great question. So you might notice there's no behind the scenes doors like you might have noticed in the reptile house. So we've actually changed up our style of caging, and this whole panel is actually the door. So all of these exhibits are actually front opening. So what we do is we actually use the appropriate tools like snake hooks, tongs, and then usually a backup to actually open this door. So it's got a double keyed system that we have to unlock. And then what we do is we make sure we know exactly where all the animals are in the enclosure, and then with the appropriate tools and personnel, we'll go ahead and open the exhibit. And if we need to remove the animal, we'll put it into a venomous snake barrel, usually dictated by a bright red color so you know it means danger, as well as a sticker that says danger venomous snakes.
Very nice. And Quinn wants to know, how did you become a reptile keeper?
So that's a great question, Quinn. I actually became a reptile keeper by starting to volunteer at the zoo as a zoo teen a long time ago. And I actually was fortunate enough to just always have a love for animals and especially reptiles. When I turned about 14, I became infatuated with reptiles, all the diversity and just how people didn't understand them. And I wanted to be the voice of the reptiles and say how cool they are to everybody that would be willing to listen.
And Gail asks, are there certain kinds of snakes you can keep as a pet?
So I would highly and strongly recommend against keeping venomous snake species as a pet, but there are a few good snake species that do make good pets, like corn snakes and ball pythons. Much smaller snakes that can't really do a lot of harm as long as you're taking care of them and working with them under the appropriate supervision of an adult. But there are a lot of really cool snake species. However, you wouldn't want to keep anything that's in this room as a pet at home.
No. Ryan asks, do you conduct venomous snake bite drills as keepers?
That's a great question. We actually just conducted our monthly snake bite alarm test yesterday, and we often will complete the snake bite drills where we make it as real as possible. So there will often be a theoretical victim that usually we take black Sharpie and make 2 envenomation marks, and then the person will pretend to be bitten by the species, and then the other people working that day will need to react appropriately. So that goes with our snake bite alarm system, as well as we go all the way to the point where we would not call an ambulance, but mock call one.
Very good. And Ashton wants to know, do most snakes have heat vision?
That's a great question. So you're thinking of the pit vipers, which are our rattlesnakes, and then some of our arboreal vipers. So not all snakes have heat vision, but usually our vipers have them. So if we look at, let me see if I can find one that has some good visible heat pits. So this is one of our eyelash vipers up here, so it might be a little hard to see, but if you look right in front of its eyeball of the yellow one, you might be able to see some small little kind of holes that almost look like weird nostrils. And that's actually the heat sensing pits. So it'd be much like the snake is looking at us in a thermal imaging camera.
And Josh asks, what is the most aggressive snake?
Ooh, the most aggressive snake really depends on the day. We try not to treat any snake as if it's docile or used to us, as that's how accidents can happen. But I would say some of our more crazy snakes would be like our taipans and our mambas, just because they are so quick and like to move. Often they're not trying to bite us. They're more or less just trying to get away from us, as they perceive us as a potential threat to them. So I would say most snakes are not actively trying to bite us, but they're just trying to defend themselves because they don't know that we're not trying to eat them.
And Tabby, age 6, asks, is snake venom made into medicine?
That is a great question, and one of the great themes behind this exhibit as a whole. So there is quite a few species that actually help with different medicine. There's a lot of trials, and if you actually look, I won't go into too much detail of it, but if you actually look, we have a graphic over here that talks all about the different types of species and what medicines they actually help with. So some of the ones we have are Russell's vipers, which is over here in this room, and then we even have our copperheads as well, helping to prevent breast cancer and make medicine for that. So there's a lot of really cool different uses for venom, not only just to kill and eat prey.
And Laura wants to know, what is your favorite snake?
My favorite snake probably has to be the king cobra. We don't often think of snakes as intelligent species, but the king cobras often are much more in tune with their surroundings and curious in a regard that they're constantly watching what's happening, predicting what you might do next. And there's something about working with an animal that really could try and kill you if it wanted to, but has the understanding to know that you're not a threat nor a food item in that current moment.
And Brogan wants to know if snakes ever fight.
So yeah, snakes will fight occasionally. So often we try not to house two males together if there's a female present. Oftentimes battles will be over a female and males will actually combat. So you may see two male snakes, they'll actually kind of move in an upward fashion, and they'll kind of almost twirl around like a straw. And it's what they're doing is each male is trying to push the other male's head down in a way of asserting its dominance over that territory and trying to make it go off and try to breed with the female. Now, we try and keep that away as much as possible. This exhibit is a perfect example. These are actually all boy snakes or male snakes. And we have not seen any levels of fighting or anything because the female isn't present to put off those pheromones that would make the males want to fight.
And Ryan wants to know if there's a very cute snake.
So that is a great question and a great aspect into our next species. I personally have to say this white-lipped viper, which is actually blue, is pretty darn cute. It's a tiny little viper, but it's actually naturally occurring a really unique blue color. And then it even actually has like these dark red eyes and a little bit of red on its tail.
These are so cool. He was pointing these out to us this morning, and we were fascinated. I can say I have never seen a blue snake before.
They definitely are one of a kind. And this species actually is pretty unique in they actually come in three kind of different color phases. There's blue. You may have seen yellow if you've been in this building. In the past like 6 months or so, we had a yellow species, which is now downstairs, that we're hoping to reproduce this year. And then there's actually a green form as well.
And Mason, age 7, would like to know how long it takes for snakes to digest their food.
That's a great question, Mason. So usually, depending on the species, a snake can digest its food anywhere from about 24 hours to almost up to a full week. So if it eats a really abnormally large item, it may take about a whole week for it to go through its digestive tract and actually start to break down. So you may have seen videos of a large python eating something like a deer. Usually that takes a little bit longer to break down than if we were to feed an appropriate sized mouse to a rattlesnake.
Sure. And Emma wants to know if there are ever any chances to hold a snake here at the zoo.
So we don't ever hold any of our venomous snakes, but usually you can, if you find an educator on grounds, we have a lot of different programs that will often bring out non-venomous snakes from our education collection, and you probably won't get to hold it, but you might actually get to touch it if you're lucky.
And Ruth asks, what's the biggest snake you have here at the zoo?
The biggest snake we have here at the zoo by length would have to be our reticulated python over in the reptile house. And by actual weight is probably our anaconda, which is also in the reptile house just across. Those are two pretty big snakes.
Awesome. And we are going to end today, Nick, with what is your favorite part of being a keeper here at the zoo?
You know, I would just have to say that my favorite part of being a keeper is really just getting to spend every day working with the species that I love and educating our visitors just about how cool these snakes really are.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You had amazing questions. Nick did an awesome job. Many of you have said he is so knowledgeable. You can tell he really has a huge passion for these snakes. So we hope that the next time you're at the zoo, you will stop into the Venomous Snake Room here in the ProMedica Museum of Natural History, and you can pass along some of the facts that you learned here today. Thanks for joining us as always, and we'll see you tomorrow.